Welcome back, everyone. Today is the 10th of August, 2024. My name is Derek, author and webmaster of Gematrinator.com. And today I want to talk a little bit about the plane crash yesterday in the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo, where over 60 people were killed when Vopass Flight 2283 entered a tailspin and crashed in the nearby city of Veneto. Now, there's conflicting reports about the number of people on board. This article says 61. Wikipedia telling us 62. And we'll talk a little bit about these numbers, which is what we focus on here on this channel. On this channel, we use the ancient occulted language of Gematria to explore the intricacies of our world as expressed through the synchronistic events that occur on a daily basis. And when you compare these languages of Gematria that I'm showing on the screen, and compare them to dates on the calendar, both date numerologies and date durations, the measurement between two dates, we find that something truly bizarre is happening in this world. And on this channel, I try to cover every major commercial airliner crash, as all of these seem to be manifesting by a rather strict numerical code. So first, before we dive into the numbers, let's talk a little bit about the synchronicity of this plane crash. Because this Vopass flight went down on August 9th of 2024, which was just one day after a 7.1 earthquake struck southern Japan, triggering a tsunami warning for many parts of the country. And of course, this stoked memories of the 2011 quake, which caused a tsunami that killed tens of thousands of people in the country. Now, why do I call this a synchronicity? Well, earlier this year, on January 2nd, there was a plane crash with a Japan Airlines flight as it landed at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan. And if you search my channel or check the description below, you'll find the video I made on the numerology of that incident. Well, that Japan Airlines crash in Japan was also just one day after another major earthquake struck the country. On January 1st, New Year's Day, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck the nation, causing much damage. This was called the Noto earthquake. And pretty devastating, a lot of property damage especially. So now we have another plane crash a day after an earthquake. And this is just an example of how history seems to repeat itself over time. Now also think about the dates. August 8th for the earthquake in Japan, and August 9th for the Vopass crash. Well, last year, on August 8th, we had the Lahaina wildfires in the state of Hawaii, which of course sits in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, roughly halfway to Japan. It was the following day, August 9th, when a state of emergency was declared by the governor of Hawaii. So here we are exactly 1 year after these events, and we get a plane crash that's connected to an earthquake once again. Back in the year 2018, Hawaii had a false missile alert when citizens received a text message alerting them that there could be a nuclear missile inbound. And this turned out to be a completely false alarm. But I want you to notice the time that this alarm was sent. 8:08 a.m. local time there in Hawaii. And of course, this connects to the date August 8th, which was the date of the earthquake in Japan and the date of the wildfires in Lahaina, Hawaii last year. In regards to the number 808, in the language of Gematria, the phrase false alarm has an ordinal value of 88. This cipher numbering each letter 1 through 26. So 6 plus 1 plus 12. Add these all of these numbers together, you get 88, just like the time that alarm was sent. Yesterday's plane crash in Brazil was 2,400 days after the false alarm in Hawaii. And it was also exactly 24 mercurial years after the Lion Air plane crash, also in the year 2018. And we'll talk more about this Lion Air crash in a couple minutes here. But first, think about the number 24. This is, of course, the current year that we're in, 24. Well, this plane crash occurred on the date August 9th, or 8-9. And notice how the number 89 is the 24th prime number. The reason Mercury is so significant here is because in ancient Roman mythology, Mercury is the god of travelers and transportation. So in virtually every video that I talk about a plane crash or a car crash, we're always looking at deep riddles with the god and planet Mercury. Now, there's one other synchronistic element about this story I wanted to share. When I made a video last year on the Lahaina wildfires, I focused on a riddle connecting the event to the cartoon Dora the Explorer. Now, on the surface, I understand why this may seem silly, but consider how Dora, this was the name of the hurricane that caused the wildfires in Hawaii. Dora the Explorer aired a special on August 9th, exactly 4 years before the wildfires. This brings us to another famous kids' cartoon. Maybe famous is a little bit of a stretch, but it's certainly one I remember from my childhood. There was a show called Tailspin that was created by Disney. And notice how Tailspin ended on August 8th of 1991, which means it was exactly 33 years before the earthquake in Japan on August 8th this year. And the reason I point out Tailspin is because this is what happened to the airplane that crashed yesterday. It went into a tailspin, plunging into the city of Veneto, killing everybody on board. If we instead measure from the debut date of Tailspin, which lasted just 1 season there on television, notice how this plane crash was exactly 1,770 weeks later. And this is a number that's relevant to the riddle we'll be discussing, as 1770 is the Gematria of the number 2283, which was the number on the airplane that crashed yesterday, Vopass Airlines Flight 2283. In the last part of this video, we'll talk about how this is a riddle connected to Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones Society equals 1770, as do the two numbers that represent the secret society, 223 and 322, both with 1770 Gematria, lining up perfectly with the measurement from the debut of Tailspin to the tailspin of this plane crash just yesterday. But amongst all these weeds, there lies another riddle that's connected to the 1929 stock market crash here in the United States, which led to the Great Depression. And if you've been paying attention to any good decoders over the last year or more, you'll know that there's a strong Great Depression riddle with this upcoming election and Kamala Harris, as the current Democratic nominee was born on the exact same day that Herbert Hoover died. Herbert Hoover, the president in office during the stock market crash of 1929. So let's talk about the riddle that connects yesterday's crash to this other element. Now, we talked about how Japan is important to what's going on. Two major earthquakes in Japan, a plane crash in Japan to start the year. Well, on Monday, as U.S. markets dropped about 2 to 3%, the Japanese Nikkei had a much larger plunge, dropping a whopping 12% in one day, which is the biggest drop since a day called Black Monday all the way back in 1987. Yesterday's crash happened just one day before World Lion Day, which is celebrated annually during the time of Leo, of course, the astrological sign, the constellation that's in the shape of a lion. So this is celebrated on August 10th every year. And August 10th is also the birthday of Herbert Hoover, the Great Depression president. And when the Great Depression started, it was largely due to a day called Black Tuesday. So while Japan had its own Black Monday, America and Wall Street had its own Black Tuesday. Back in the year 2018, there was a major plane crash from a Lion Air passenger plane, Flight 610, and this airline crashed on October 29th, which is the anniversary of Black Tuesday, all the way back in 1929. Now check this out. That Lion Air crash happened exactly 89 years after Black Tuesday and its Wall Street crash there in New York City. This year's plane crash happened on the date August 9th, or 8-9, as it's written here in the United States. The airline Vopas, which yesterday's crash occurred on, was founded back in the year 1995. 23,989 days after that same date of the crash. So there you have the 9-8 and the 8-9, how the date would be written in multiple parts of the world. So Black Tuesday, this date that we're measuring to, is October 29th, or 10/29. Yesterday's crash was 10 months and 29 days after the date September 11th, which is, of course, the anniversary of the biggest air disaster in the United States when 4 airliners reportedly crashed in a massive terrorist attack. And another reason the number 9/11 is important to all of this is because President Herbert Hoover, the Great Depression president, died at 90 years, 10 weeks, and 1 day of age. 911. Also, the number on yesterday's flight, 2,283, has matching 661 Gematria with stock market crash and Veneto, Brazil, 661 in Gematria. Another 661 in the significant Latin or Agrippa's key method is Mount Takamagahara. Well, Mount Takamagahara was the site of the worst airline disaster in history, at least as far as single plane crashes. The deadliest single plane crash of all time was Japan Airlines Flight 123, which crashed on Mount Takamagahara. And the reason I point this out is, of course, because we've been talking about these Japan Airlines crashes. Earlier this year, when we had the crash at Haneda, that was the first deadly crash for Japan Airlines since this one in 1985. The 1985 crash happened on the date August 12th. Well, this year, August 12th is the date of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av, the ancient Jewish day of fast, which commemorates the destruction of the 2 temples. And in Gematria, Tisha B'Av equals 9/11. Of course, it was the date 9/11 when the two towers in New York were destroyed. To expand on this 9/11 riddle, on the date September 11th of 2001, an important book was published called Life of Pi. This book would later be turned into a movie in the year 2012. And for the next part of this video, I want to talk about a significant pi riddle that played out with the numerology of yesterday's crash. Yesterday was 283 phases of the moon since the 9/11 attacks. And in Latin Gematria, the moon equals 283. Today, which is World Lion Day, is a span of exactly 283 weeks after the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. And the reason this crash connects to what's going on this week is because the Lion Air crash happened on the 302nd day of the year. And then we had this Ethiopian crash the very next year, just a few months later in 2019. When written out, the number 666 also has gematria of 2083, syncing up with the moon and the number of lunar phases since 9/11. This number, 2083, is the 314th prime number. And of course, 314, the first three digits of pi. Pi resolves the mathematics of the circle, which has Latin gematria of 666, just like the phrase mathematical perfection. But check this out. Yesterday's crash was 301 weeks and 4 days after the 2018 plane crash, which I lost the Wikipedia page for, the Lion Air crash. Yesterday's crash was also 31 weeks and 4 days after the Haneda crash involving Japan Airlines. So 2 314 measurements to connected airline crashes. The first number in the alphabetic order, with gematria of 314, is 777. And check out the data with the city of Venado, where this plane crashed yesterday. Venado not only has 777 people per square kilometer, but the city is also situated at an elevation of 777 meters. And consider that we're talking about riddles with Hawaii and Japan. Well, back in the year 1941, Japan attacked the state of Hawaii to pull America into World War II. When you write out the phrase attack on Pearl Harbor, it sums to 314. Also notice the reduction or Pythagorean value of 82. Well, if you measure from the attack on Pearl Harbor to the date of yesterday's plane crash, you get 82 years, 8 months, and 2 days. A double 82 to go with the gematria of the event. And that's on top of the 314 and 777 connection, which shows how this is all a pi riddle. Truly incredible. But another major pi event is an eclipse. Consider how the moon and sun, the two largest circles in the sky, intersect to give us a solar eclipse. And in satanic gematria, a numeric cipher, which is constructed around the number 666, This is the sum of the phrase satanic gematria in this method. The word eclipse sums to 314. Measuring from the Great American Eclipse back in April to the date of this crash was 124 days. 124 is the ordinal gematria of both Black Tuesday and Depression. Great Depression is 175, and 124 days is also 17 weeks and 5 days. Furthermore, this crash happened a span of exactly 150 years after the birth of Herbert Hoover. And U.S. President and Depression both have this 150 gematria. So really wild stuff here, but next I want to look at a riddle connected to the Yale Skull and Bones Secret Society. Because this university is currently 322 years old, turning that age in the year 2023. Here we see how Yale, currently 322 years old, and 322, the number on the emblem of Skull and Bones, the secret society headquartered at the university. Well, this is also connected to this pi code, because when you use the word "and" within these numbers, the first two numbers to have gematria of 314 are 223 and 322. In the alphabetic order, the phrase skull and crossbones equals 223, syncing up with the 322 on the emblem. Well, wouldn't you know, this plane crashed in Veneto, Sao Paulo, Brazil, which has reverse gematria of 322. On top of that, the city of Veneto on its own equals 322 in satanic gematria, the cipher I just showed you. Yesterday had primary numerology of 61 and 41. Well, 61 and 41 is the reduction value of both skull and crossbones and skull and bones. Veneto, the city, also sums to 41. And also consider how some of these outlets are reporting that 61 people have been killed. 8 plus 9 plus 20 plus 24, 61, just like skull and crossbones. When you write out Skull and Bones Society, you get gematria of 245, 295, and 101. Well, check out the gematria of the flight number, 2283. This sums to both 295 and 245. Veneto, Sao Paulo, Brazil, also 245 and 101. But you have to really appreciate how the number 2283 in Latin gematria ends with 322. This crash was also 295 days after the date October 20th, which again is the birthday of Kamala Harris and the date that Herbert Hoover died. 295 matching Skull and Bones Society. Also, in the ordinal methods, 223 without the word "and" equals 295. So does 322. The phrase plane crash equals 308. If we look at the airline Vopas was founded on the date July 3rd when it commenced operations for the first time. Yesterday's crash was 38 days after July 3rd. And the airline was also 10,630 days old. Well, the number 163 is the 38th prime number. So you had this double 38 connection for this airline yesterday. And of course, 38, a significant number of death, killing, murder, RIP, all 38 in Gematria. This being the number stamped into the murder by numbers poster. So the word killing equals 38 and 74, reduction and ordinal. And if you measure from the date Yale was founded all the way back in the year 1701 to the date of yesterday's crash, you get exactly 3,874 months. Syncing up with the word killing perfectly. This 74 is also found in Vopas Linhas Aéreas, which is the airliner's name in Portuguese. 74 and 115. Veneto, Sao Paulo, Brazil, 115. The word killing with double gematria of 115. Both Skull and Bone Society and Masonic have this 74 and 115 combination. 74, of course, a number connected to the total solar eclipse code. Remember how darkness falls over the sky during the crucifixion of Jesus, dying on the cross as the Christian Messiah. Again, killing 74. Well, notice how yesterday's crash was 123 days after the total solar eclipse in the United States. With capital letters, plane crash equals 123, and in standard, Herbert Hoover has that 123 as well. Yesterday was also the 222nd day of a leap year, and that's the value of Japan Airlines. And while yesterday's crash was not a Japan Airlines flight, this is very obviously a riddle connected to that company, which had a couple of major instances that are related to this event. So it all comes together very well. And yeah, I think there's something connected to the Olympics with all this. Of course, the last Olympic Games were in Japan. The Olympics before Japan were in Brazil, right? And tomorrow, the Olympics in Paris, France, come to a conclusion. And all of these countries, plus Ethiopia, members of BRICS, shout out to Casey Jones Astrology, who did a video yesterday on this very incident, connecting it to World Lion Day. So check that out. I'll link it below in the description on top of my other posts and videos that are related to this. But for now, that'll do it for this video. Thanks to everybody for chiming in. Whether you're watching live or archived, do feel free to like, share, subscribe, etc. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you all next time. See ya!